Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to another episode of Joey and Josh. And in today's video, we are going to be discussing Lucy Letby. So Lucy Letby is a British former neonatal nurse who was convicted of the murders of 7 infants and the attempted murders of 7 others between June 2015 and June 2016. Now 10 years on from the start of this period in question, when these newborn babies lost their lives, and after spending years behind bars, there are serious growing concerns that Lucy Letby may well have never committed a single murder, nor attempted to commit one. And these concerns haven't come out of the blue. These concerns aren't a result of internet conspiracy theories, and these concerns have come directly from leading experts in the field of the case, who are now publicly stating that not only is Lucy Letby's conviction not safe, some suggest there is not a single shred of evidence that Lucy Letby carried out any of the crimes that she has been convicted of. So in today's episode, we are going to take a deep dive into the case, and in doing so, give our own opinions on whether this is a case of Britain's most prolific child killer, or whether this is a case of NHS incompetence and a cover-up.
This is a bit of a live case.
Yeah.
It's ongoing right now. We're not experts in the field. We're not criminologists.
No.
Can't even say it.
There you go.
Don't have any
proof you need.
Don't even have any agendas. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a chat through this case as if we were having a chat in a pub. That's what these guys watch for. We're going to give our honest perspective on it.
I've always wanted the true crime cases that we cover on this channel to almost be a fly on the wall perspective of how 2 normal blokes in 2025 sit and chat about, you know, crime cases and ongoing affairs.
Yeah, we're normal blokes, right? We're going to make mistakes. And the key thing that I will stress, right, is that because this is an ongoing thing, the facts, the information that we could say might change. Yep. Let's be honest, mate, this case has had so many twists and turns. I've watched Channel 4 News where they've said that the case is going one way, and we think it might have gone a completely different way. So this is another reason to stay tuned in, but just take everything that we're about to say with a pinch of salt. Joey, tell me all about Lucy Letby, please.
So Lucy Letby was born on the 4th of January 1990, and she was an only child. Her birth itself was one that wasn't without complications, and a school friend of hers told the media how she had divulged that she was actually lucky to survive childbirth herself, and how grateful she was for the nurses that handled her when she was born. And that was actually considered to be one of the driving motivations as to why she wanted to work within the field that she did. Once leaving school, she received her education at the University of Cheshire over a 3-year period, during which time she also worked as a student nurse in both Cheshire and Liverpool. Letby initially failed her final year student placement, but after requesting a new assessor, passed shortly after.
Letby then began working as a registered nurse at the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2012. 3 years later, after Letby began working at the hospital, an alarming and significant rise in newborn fatalities occurred, which forced an investigation. In fact, there were a total of 61 cases of neonatal deaths recorded and deliberated during the subsequent trial of Lucy Letby. And in 2015, the rate of neonatal deaths doubled from the previous year.
The investigation ended up with all fingers being pointed at one member of staff, rather than insufficient care or incompetence across the board. And that member of staff was Lucy Letby. However, not a single member of staff had ever witnessed any crime that Lucy Letby had apparently carried out, and therefore convicting her would not be easy. Now, Lucy Letby denied all allegations and pled not guilty to everything that she was accused of. However, on the 21st of August 2023, Lucy Letby was found guilty of the murder of 7 infants and the attempted murder of 7 more, and sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, Josh Aveste, this is how I know that you are committed to the cause, my friend.
I feel like I should sort of press my metaphorical glasses to my brow at this point.
Here we go. Investor Aveste, right? When I said that I wanted to cover the case, he said, right, I'll start working on the court case and whatnot. And obviously, you guys watching know that I'm the looks and Josh is the brains. I'd say the looks as well.
I would say you're the looks and the brains, and I'm the sort of like hanger-oner.
No,
do you know what I mean?
Silly. The comments are going mad for that. The comments are here for the big dog. No, but what I would say is I make no bones about it that Josh is the intelligent one out of the two of us. So when we're sort of planning these videos, I said, right, you look into the court case and I want to know what the main evidence is against Lucy Letby. This man went one beyond and put his hand in his pocket and paid his hard-earned cash to download the complete court manuscript.
It's only 100 grand.
Yeah, there you go.
So, you know, it wasn't even
cool
that
little
expensive.
100 grand. Find that down the back of the sofa.
No, I had to do this right. Like, I really wanted to find all of the evidence against this woman. I came into this case a bit late, and all of the evidence that comes through later on suggests that she might not be guilty. But all of the trial evidence indicates that she was.
Right. Well, I think this is a perfect time then before we get into the evidence against her. As a result of Josh spending his hard-earned cash and getting the court manuscripts and the work that we've obviously put into this, if you are not already and you enjoy the content coming out of this channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It's one click of a button for you guys, but it helps us more than you could possibly imagine. So if you want to see content continue to come out on a weekly basis off of this channel, it is essential you subscribe. And I'll tell you what, if you're clicking a button once, you might as well click it twice. Hit a like on this video right now, and if you're clicking it twice, might as well click it 3 times, don't
Yeah,
they?
why not? Just make sure you're lucky.
Hit the
Just
notification
Punch
bell.
it like a Joey Knight jab.
Just hit it. Right, Josh, hit me with the evidence against Letby.
Yeah, because you think that she's an absolute goner. You think that she was guilty as charged, don't you?
I did before I started looking into the case, and I'm not saying that I don't now, but I'm definitely more uncertain than I was.
Okay, so the evidence that you originally saw then started off with something like the statistical evidence. You are a bit of a mathematician. Yeah, mathematician. You like your 2 times table, your 3 times table, and sometimes a 4 times table. And in a statistical evidence, what they looked at this case is, I think there was 61 deaths that were suspicious within this neonatal unit. And fuck me, that's terrifying. You know, if you're a father, think about all these sort of poor kids that are going through this, and the parents that have to deal with this. Like, ultimately, what I will say before we get into all this evidence is we've got to be a bit sensitive here, because there are parents now still grieving, still going through this. And I think we owe them a little bit of time here to just have a thought in our minds.
100%. And not only that, I think it's very important that we acknowledge that there are parents that, yes, are grieving, but will potentially feel like they have had some sort of closure to this case. Yeah. And therefore, the questioning of the validity of the conviction is obviously going to be really, really distressing to those parents. So we send our utmost respect and condolences and any other thing we can send to them. 100%. At the same time, you know, it's a true crime case, and no one wants to see someone put behind bars for something that they may not have done. Not that we're suggesting that, but that's why we are looking into the case and ultimately putting it down to these guys to form their own opinions.
Exactly. So the cases that they found, there was a direct statistical link, and the prosecution provided this in the trial, that said that during the times in which Lucy Letby was on the wards and in the care of these children, she there was a higher rate in which there were cases against her, i.e. there were more rates of deaths during that time, which is an incredibly scary thing to think about. So the first thing is the statistical evidence, right? Now that's been disputed, but let's just take it for what it is. The prosecution used it in their case. Then we've got to go to the medical evidence, because there is a considerable amount of information that was presented during the trial to convict Lucy Letby that there was medical incidents and problems that were going on. Now, the first thing that we have to discuss are the air embolisms. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what this means, effectively what it indicates is that someone was injected, or you know what it's like, you put a catheter into a person and then you can give them medicine or whatever, right? If you put air into someone's veins, that causes a significant problem in the body and ultimately can cause things like blood clots and other various medical concerns that you and I would never be able to explain.
And then to expound on that, if you were to put air into a infant's veins that, has been literally on this planet a couple of minutes, then the consequences would be significantly dire.
I mean, even for a grown adult, that's a big problem when air gets into your veins. So yeah, for a child, it's a big issue. Not only was there that problem, but there was also some incidents of foul play around insulin. So there were records to say that some babies had extremely high doses of insulin injected into their bodies. And again, insulin is incredibly dangerous for a young child, let alone a grown adult as well. It directly impacts your blood sugar and therefore can affect things like your blood pressure and various other sort of heart-based sort of problems, and let alone your brain as well. So that was a serious thing to also do. And it wasn't just that. There were experts that were called during the trial. And when I say experts, really what we're talking about is one clear expert. His name was Dr. Dewey Evans. And he testified that the evidence that we provided earlier on about the embolisms in the insulin, there's no other way that it could have been anyone else other than via Lucy Letby's actions. And again, when you're there in a trial, you've got to put yourself in the mind of a juror. A juror is going to be trusting the evidence by a senior doctor that comes in and says, yes, look, I know what I'm doing. I've qualified. I've gone under the Hippocratic Oath. I'm not lying to you. This is my view of the evidence. And the prosecution provided this expert, and the expert was quite damning against Lucy Letby. So that was the medical evidence. I think when you first sort of caught eyes on this case, you were looking at that medical evidence, weren't you, to sort of say that's the open and shut element of this. They were using data from a study, I think, from quite a long time ago to justify this.
The study itself was from 1980, the data that they were using. The doctor who actually was responsible for that study that was used wasn't actually made aware that his study was being used in the Lucy Letby case, was he?
No, he wasn't.
It was actually after the case had come to fruition and obviously hit the headlines and stuff that he realised that his papers that he had published all those years ago, we're talking, the best part of 50 years ago, by the way, George.
Yeah, a long time.
Had been used.
Yeah.
And when he found out about this, that was when some alarm bells started to ring.
Yes, and we've got to remember his name. His name is Dr. Shoo Lee. And the reason why that is very important to keep in your memory is because he, later on down the line, wanted to review those findings and prove that they were used improperly in the trial. So again, this is the start of where the twists and turns begin. And I think misuse of medical evidence is incredibly concerning in this case. But it wasn't just medical evidence, mate. There were also some circumstantial stuff that we will whiz through here, but I think we need to discuss later on in the case, right? There were handwritten notes that Lucy Letby wrote, but she said things like, I am evil, I did this. Very concerning. There were morbid records, and what we mean by that are, there were records indicating the dates in which these certain babies died, which again, doesn't seem right, does it, Joe?
No.
It doesn't. And it wasn't just that. She also looked up the babies' families on Facebook.
So can I come in now and just give some thoughts on the points that you've just made? There is literally a YouTube channel, I believe, called Morbid Fascination. Yeah? Have you ever heard of that channel? It's got millions
I mean, with this sort of topic area, I have to become a huge subscriber of it, mate.
I
have to learn about these cases with you around.
You'd be one of millions of subscribers, by the way. Morbid Fascination is having an interest in something that's gruesome, something that's morbid. And if there was no one that had that morbid fascination on planet Earth, then Netflix would have never made probably 90% of their most successful documentaries. True crime YouTube videos wouldn't really be a thing, and people investigating into cases in terms of people that aren't involved or have a right to be investigating into those cases just wouldn't happen. So morbid curiosity and fascination is a real thing, right? And I'm not saying that I think this is normal. I think it's very, very weird behaviour that she was searching the families of these infants that very, very unfortunately passed away at birth. I think it's really, really weird that she was searching them on Facebook. However, I don't think that is a indication of guilt that is, really, really solid and concrete. Now, let's then move on to the handwritten letters, right? These handwritten letters were, I believe, once she was already in custody. Am I right to...
You are correct in saying that. And not only after she was in custody, but after she had been referred to a counsellor who recommended to her that she did write down these notes to sort of, I suppose, clarify one's thoughts.
Yep. So there's a case in America that, again, I grew a bit of a fascination with, and it was the death of two young girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty Rose Germain. Now, a man named Richard Matthew Allen was eventually sentenced for this murder, and he was put in solitary confinement. Like anyone, if you're put in a room for months on end and you're not let out for exercise and things like that, you are going to suffer serious psychological damage, right? And one of the main things that the prosecution used to, because there was no sort of DNA evidence, there was no real hard evidence as far as I'm aware in this case. One of the main things that the prosecution used to convict Richard Allen were some notes that he had written down in solitary confinement, which I believe that any high-profile prisoner like Lucy Letby would also be in her situation because of fear of revenge attacks and stuff like that, right? Now, in Richard Allen, the guy from America who is sentenced now behind bars for the killings of Liberty German and Abigail Williams, in the notes that he had used, right, and that he had been writing down, he said about killing the girls, right? So straight away, you read them notes and you're like, well,
it's an open and shut case.
That's a confession.
Yeah.
He's confessed. He also spoke of the fact that he killed his wife and that he killed his son. He never killed his wife or his son. His wife and his son are alive.
So explain that then. Why is he writing those notes? What is there to gain out of doing that? Because I just don't sit now writing a piece of paper that I've killed people. Like,
no. But if you had spent, let's call it 3 months in solitary confinement, the Richard Allen case is very, very different to the Lucy Letby case. In terms of the Lucy Letby case, I think that let's dive into a completely hypothetical world, by the way, where this is a case of incompetence by Lucy Letby, by the NHS across the board, rather than Britain's most prolific child killer, right? Let's dive into the hypothetical world that this is a case of incompetence. If it is a case of incompetence, right, having spent all of this time in solitary confinement and having known that you've gone through court and the whole world believes that you're guilty of these things, then I think that you can go loopy.
Was she, just to clarify, was she in solitary confinement? Because I don't think she was by herself in prison at this time, was she?
What, when she wrote the notes?
Yeah. She wasn't by herself.
I don't think she's on a general population wing, Josh.
Do you not think?
Lucy Letby.
Really?
Are you serious?
I don't think she would have been in solitary. That feels like a real serious punishment. We don't know the answer to it.
Josh, Tommy Robinson's in solitary confinement. Do you know what I mean?
A bit different.
in terms of how many revenge attacks would be out on that.
So you're saying she's in for her own protection? Okay, I get it.
You say it's a bit different. You say it's a bit different.
Yeah.
And you say it's a bit different because there are so many people that would want to attack Tommy Robinson. Yeah. Yeah.
I presume so. Yeah.
You'd presume so. Yeah. There are also so many people in prisons that would want to protect him.
Yes.
And that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. And
that's not us giving our views on that.
No.
That's me just stating that that's a fact. And if it wasn't a fact, then his documentaries on Rebel Media and whatnot, and on Twitter that Elon Musk has now, what's it? He's
sort of publicised.
He's publicised and whatnot. If that wasn't the case, that wouldn't be that, right? Do you think there's anyone in a woman's prison who would want to protect Lucy Letby?
No, I don't think that.
No. So I am again. This is why we say we're like two mates chatting in a pub. I'm under the impression that these notes have probably come from when she's in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
And therefore, what I'm saying is, I wouldn't rule out a possibility that this woman has gone loopy. Right?
Can we just very briefly go into what she actually said on the notes?
Yes.
Because I think we'd be doing a disservice to the audience if we didn't actually say it. Right, but before we get into that, let me just tell you very quickly about Heights. Heights is the sponsor of this episode, and we really appreciate them working with us. If you want to support the channel, check out Heights. Basically what they do is they offer two key products that I use all the time. One is the probiotic. The probiotic is something that I used extensively because of stomach issues that I used to have. I used to get real problems when I had pizza, which I absolutely loved. I almost thought I would give up pizza, which is a huge problem and a really gutting thing to even think about. But the probiotic I take every day now, and I found that has massively improved my stomach issues. And they also do a daily multivitamin, which I also take, which helps cognition, making sure that you don't feel fatigued. It's been an absolute lifesaver for me. So if you want to up your health game in 2025, make sure you check out Heights. There'll be a link in the description. Now let's get right back into the video. Can I just read some quotes out to you? She says, "I am evil. I did this." Separate quote, "I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them." Then she says, "I don't know if I killed them. Maybe I did. Maybe this is all down to me." And there's loads more, isn't there? There's so many other things that I was really, really unsure with. Like, I haven't done anything wrong. We tried our best and it wasn't enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not good enough. Like, I think that attests actually to your point a little bit. Because I think there are quotes in that you go, open and shut, confession.
Yeah.
And then I think there are quotes in that where you go, she's maybe questioning her own ability, the ability of other staff members on that ward, and therefore infants died, because the irrefutable fact is that children died.
Yeah.
There's no, that's the truth. So I think even if she is innocent, she or innocent to a degree, she feels guilt.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that is a human emotion, and that is something that even in complete sanity you will feel. And if this woman has gone insane, again, hypothetically, this might be the ramblings of a woman that has gone insane, is what I'm saying. I again don't feel like that is a solid confession from Lucy Letby to do of doing it, right?
True.
And also, if these notes are wrote in solitary confinement, you can tell me in the comment section if they're not, whatever. Even before she was arrested, she knew she was under investigation, right? So it would have played a big part on her mental health. Let's say, for example, if she was innocent. And this is what we're speaking about in the video today, right? Now, do we want to get on to Dr. Shoo Lee, is it?
Shoo Lee.
Shoo Lee, Dr. Shoo Lee.
Yes, I think we should get on to him. What we should say before we quickly do that is the court case, the deliberations by the jury, was some of the longest deliberations that has ever been in a criminal court case in the UK, which predicates all of that evidence being difficult to sort of explain and also difficult to digest enough to get a verdict, in which they finally did, and Lucy was deemed guilty and sent to jail, right? But after that, there is then this unprecedented review by Dr. Shoo Lee. Now, the reason why we mentioned him earlier on is that he wrote this paper in 1989, was it?
Yeah.
Which was talking about air embolisms in children.
And it also spoke about some of the patterns of recognition of air embolisms, which was obviously discolourment of the skin and whatnot.
Discoloration, and there were other symptoms in which he described. Now, as you say earlier on in the video, he didn't know that the prosecution were using this evidence. And so when he finds out that they were using it and feels that it was used improperly, he has to start... I mean, the guilt goes into his mind. He goes, right, I need to find out if this is true, if this is correct. So he goes through the court documents. He goes through all of the evidence. And he deems in his own mind that the evidence was used improperly. So as I say, he starts with a series of events which leads to a 14-person panel assisting him to find out the truth behind this. And all of these people were medical experts that knew what they were doing and had reviewed the case in a detail which I would, paying $100,000 to get the evidence, would never be able to do, right? They've got a lot more expertise than me. So what we're saying is the prosecution used one guy's evidence, Dewey Evans, but this was a cross-border international, because this guy's based in Canada, by the way, cross-border international investigation to find the truth. And so what finally happens is that he does this press conference where he sits down. This happened recently, by the way, didn't it?
Very recently, within the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So he sits down and he goes through all of their findings, which is a huge detailed report, which we'll link in the description, which you can access and download as a PDF. And it was, to say explosive is an understatement. Like, it basically blew the case wide open.
And in a nutshell, Dr. Shoo Lee and the panel of experts concluded that there was no medical evidence to support claims that Letby deliberately harmed or murdered babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Instead, they claimed that they had attributed many, if not all, of the deaths to natural causes or substandard medical care.
So would you say overall that he's kind of trying to remove the blame from one individual nurse in Letby and trying to put it towards like a more huge issue about the NHS as a whole?
I would go along with that, yeah. I wouldn't say he's trying to do it. I would say he's trying to undo what he feels are misdoings, right? I think it's do you know what? It's probably relevant. I can give you my own story, right? I've got a daughter. You know my daughter. You've had the unfortune of meeting her. She's
the best.
She's a bit of a rowdy one.
Yeah.
No, she's a legend. And she is 3.5 years old now, right? Now, when my missus and I went to the hospital, it was actually during the sort of lockdown time. We got to the hospital. My missus was never checked to see if she was dilated, anything like that. And they tried to send us home. And I said, look, I'm not going home. I said, my missus is telling me she feels like she needs to push and whatnot. I'm not going home. They tried to send us home. I said, right, that's fine. I know full well as a taxpayer and whatnot, and a citizen of this country, I know that you cannot send us home. I can be told I've got to wait out in the car park and whatnot, but you cannot send my pregnant missus home, and I am not risking the chance of having my daughter born at home with insufficient care, right? Within 45 minutes of them trying to send us home, my daughter was coming out, right? Now, in the meantime, they said, okay, we're going to put your partner up on a ward. By the way, the hospital's completely empty. Completely empty. There's no one there, right? Because my missus was in so much pain, again, still, no one has checked to see how dilated she is, right? So the waters are broken. We all know that. She's in labour, but no one has checked to see how dilated she is. They came along and they said to me, right, we need to give your partner pethidine. And the reason we need to give her pethidine is because the baby is not ready to come, but she's in a lot of discomfort. What's going to happen is we're going to give her this pethidine. It's going to ease all of the pain. She's going to go to sleep, and in the morning she's going to wake up and give birth to your daughter, right? So I've had to say, look, my missus never done a drug in her life, doesn't even get drunk, things like that, right? So I've had to say, like, look, you've got to take this. And anyone that knows about pethidine or is to look it up will know it's a serious drug. It can be given to women in labour, but it is strongly not advised to be given to women who are about to give birth, who are about to start pushing, right? Pethidine is, in effect, something that eases the pain and relaxes your muscles. So I'm going to give you a really, a dumbed down example of this, right? Imagine I said to you, Josh, right, right, we're going to go to the gym, yeah? And you are going to do your 1 rep max on a squat, yeah?
20 kilos.
20 kilos, there you go. But imagine I said to you, you're going to do your 1 rep max, yeah? We want the best you can ever possibly do, yeah? And you say, fine, that's good with me.
I don't really want to, but I'll do it, Joe, if you force me to,
but you'll do it. And just before I want you to get that 1 rep max, that personal best, Josh, I want you to take this bump of ketamine.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or
it wouldn't be good.
I want to give you a load of diazepam. I want to give you 50 milligram of diazepam before you do that 1 rep max, which are both sort of muscle relaxers.
I don't even know what diazepam is. There you go. Just shows my incompetence.
Diazepam, a muscle relaxer, and also given to people for anxiety and whatnot. Ketamine in effect, horse tranquilizer. Yeah. That's why they're called in the big dog. It takes
a lot to get me down.
So what I'm saying is, they gave my missus pethidine at the hospital, right? All of a sudden, she goes to sleep, and I think, sweet, cool. Sit there on the phone, I'm scrolling. Then the Undertaker sits up, yeah? She rises like the Undertaker, and then she's going like this. I'm freaked out. I've never seen my missus high. I've never seen her that drunk, yeah? And she's all like, rolling everywhere. She's off her nut on pethidine, right?
Yeah.
And then she eventually goes flat back down. And this is all in the space of about a 10-minute period. And I'm like, okay, cool, right. I feel a bit more relaxed now. All of a sudden, then she's then rose back up and she's gone, it's coming. And I went, what? She went, it's coming. She went, the baby's coming. And I've gone, really? She went, I need to push now. I went, fucking hell. So I've gone out, I've run round, I went, here, love. I said, she needs to push. She went, she doesn't need to push. She's been given pethidine, the baby's not coming for hours. I went, well, you better get in there because I'm not a nurse, yeah? So you better get in there and have a little look, right? Yeah. And then I've heard the 2 nurses, they're whispering there, right? They're talking between themselves, and basically they've said, and how dilated is she? And the other nurse is sort of like looking, and she's nothing's written down here, whatever. They haven't fucking checked. They've given a woman pethidine, and they haven't even checked. By the way, this went on in an empty hospital, not one that is being completely overrun. Just one that is clearly being understaffed, right? And that's a whole different story in terms of if you want to know why hospitals are being understaffed. Have a look at Brian True Geordie's one of his latest videos, where he breaks down what our tax-paying money is being spent on, and what percentage of our taxpayer money is being put towards the NHS, and what percentage of our taxpayer money is being put towards other things.
So on that point, I think what we will say is, while there will be some criticism of certain elements of the NHS in this, I think we have a huge sympathy and a huge amount of admiration for people that are working in the NHS and having to deal with this. Because quite frankly, they are often understaffed. They are often, not in your case, but often on really busy wards. And they have to deal with a fuckload of shit and they get paid fuck all money. So I think I personally have a lot of sympathy with the people that work in the NHS.
And I personally not only have sympathy with these people, I am so thankful for the job they did in the end in delivering my child.
Exactly.
But the point I'm trying to make is against the NHS rather than the people,
the individuals,
involved.
And that's the point that we have to say. That's the thing. There are so many people working in the NHS, sleeping on wards, really having to work their arse off for no money, and basically getting fucked by the government. Yeah. So basically, what we're saying is it's the government's fault, not the
very much involved. So in case that came across as if I'm blaming the individuals involved, no. I'm not. I'm blaming the fact that our taxpayer money isn't going towards staffing the NHS sufficiently. Either way, my missus has to give birth to our baby while completely out of her nut on pethidine, has no memory of the experience whatsoever. And I'm not going to go into detail because it's gruesome, but it wasn't nice. There was a moment that may have only been a minute but seemed like an hour, where, you know, I didn't know what to do when my daughter came back. Luckily, daughter's completely fine and no complications furthermore after that. But that's my one and only experience with neonatal units and stuff like that. So I'm just going on my own experience, and I'm saying that when it comes to Dr. Lee's report or his findings saying that it could be down to sort of incompetence almost, I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, can I just very, very quickly list some of the key points in which this doctor questioned the ability of the staff and of the unit in which Lucy Letby was employed within, right? Because when I say this guy has dismantled this report and this conviction of Lucy Letby, I haven't seen a case in which they have got this so wrong, right? There were so many different things that he said, right? He said that there was a total disregard for any surveillance warning around bacterial colonization. So, i.e., the wards that Lucy Letby was working within were not clean. Basic stuff like, when you go into hospital, the one thing you need to make sure is that the hospital is clean. There were misdiagnoses of diseases in babies. So again, junior doctors, people working on the ward that were supported by nurses, in which Lucy Letby was one, weren't diagnosing babies correctly, let alone quick enough. So they were getting things completely wrong. They were caring on this ward for babies that they were not designed to care for. This isn't a high-risk ward.
Not qualified for.
Yeah. So this isn't sort of like a ward in which very sick babies were meant to be going to. It was a sort of like, the babies are there, look after them. When it's something serious, you send them to a proper unit in which serious doctors go and take care of them. Yeah. And that wasn't happening. And then there were poor skills of resuscitation and intubation, which is effectively resuscitating children, bringing them back to life, giving them the breath of life or giving them blood. I was
resuscitated. I was putting an resuscitated and putting an incubator myself as
there
a baby.
There you go.
Yeah.
We'll go into details of individual babies soon, but there were instances where babies they weren't even given catheters or they weren't even injected properly, which is just super scary. Not only that, there was problems in the temperature of the ward. There was a difficulty often in finding an actual doctor to be able to look after them. Remember, nurses are on the ward and they support doctors. They're there to sort of be the first port of call if you need something. So, for example, if you do need a transfusion or you need something, put into your arm, that's where a nurse often does the first port of call, right? But when you're actually looking for medical care, you often want a doctor or a consultant there to do it. So yeah, I think that's just a summary of some very quick issues, but that's not exhaustive. Dr. Shoo also indicated that there were other, I'd say 30 or 40 other issues to do with this ward that we shouldn't sort of dwell on too much because we'll be going in all day. But there were significant problems, not just around Lucy Letby, but around the general functioning of this ward.
Right, so with everything we now know, with the press conference that has taken place, with, I don't want to say the tide's turning, but I do feel more people starting to ask serious questions of this case that we kind of felt had been put to bed. What is the next step now in this case?
Well, I think, do you know what was interesting? There was a politician that got involved called David Davis, who often gets involved in mistrials and sort of errors of justice, right? And he only really gets involved in the most serious, heinous errors and cases. And I felt that the point in which he got involved was a point in which we now need to discuss either a retrial, which I think is the most logical next step, to bring all of the evidence that Dr. Shoo Lee has presented to publicly to the case, and then also investigate all of the previous evidence which was used, against his original, data and his original sort of prognosis, as you should say, in terms of the information that he provided. And then let a new jury decide whether Lucy Letby is individually guilty or not. Because I don't think, based on the press conference, we can arbitrarily just say that she's innocent. I don't think that's fair.
No, and I want to make a point of this isn't me saying that I think she is innocent. I can look down the camera now and say I'm none the wiser, and I don't really lean either way in terms of thinking, right, now it's a case of, I don't know, NHS incompetence, a cover-up, anything like that, or I firmly believe that Lucy Letby is guilty. But the main thing that I want to take away from what I've learned in researching into this case is that, as much as it pains me that these poor families who my heart goes out to, I can only imagine. I spoke about my experience myself,
100%,
and obviously thank God that my experience wasn't what these families experienced. Yeah, thank God. So I can only imagine how horrific it is, and it's going to be horrific for them to have to go through the anguish of this being brought up again, when as much as they'll never get these babies back, they did probably feel like they had a bit of closure. It's going to be awful for them. So it's a lose-lose situation. But with everything that I've learned about this, it's of my opinion, and again, coming back to what I said at the start of the podcast, what we both said, I'm just a simple person with an opinion on it. It's of my opinion that this case needs a retrial.
And I agree, but I'm actually leaning more to the way that she is innocent. And the reason why is I think what they did in the press conference was go through each individual baby's case. And they basically dismantled the prosecution's case one by one. And considering the amount of babies involved in this, it was a huge amount of expert testimony and expert time that had to go through to this. And I'm seeing more and more evidence, and we can only judge the evidence as much as we can, as normal blokes. But I'm seeing more and more evidence to say each of those babies died through reasons that weren't directly as a result of Lucy Letby's malice.
So if she is innocent, there's one more question that I want to ask you to cap off this episode. Is this a horrific misjudgment from our government, from the courts, or is this something a bit more sinister? Is this a cover-up? Is this something that, the blame has been put on one specific individual because it's easier to do that and vilify one person, and also put minds at ease, because when it's very draining when you don't know who to direct your anger and your fury towards. Whereas when you have a name, when you have a person, it comes back to what I said about having some sort of closure. It is easier to do that. So
it is, and I think what you've got to look at is the senior doctors that were responsible for this hospital. And bear in mind, what happens is you've got a management that oversees hospitals, and this is not an easy job, right? You're looking after tens of staff, different shifts, life and death situations. It's incredibly, like, the most serious role you can really have, in a sort of like semi-governmental position, right? I think what they wanted to do, and this is a theory, I don't think, again, all alleged, God knows what actually has gone on. But I think, as you say, they wanted to throw someone under the bus, and they wanted to hide the obvious miscompetence of the ward at that time and all of the stuff that was going on. I think Dr. Shoo Lee did a really good job of delineating all of the problems at this hospital. And I think what the key thing that definitely the people that own the hospital and the management of the hospital wanted to do was to make sure that people that were attending the hospital were not doing so from a place of concern. Because you can imagine it now. You had a bad experience in hospital. If I know people that have had a bad experience at the fucking dentist that would never go back to that dentist, right? Let alone to a life and death situation. So what they're incredibly concerned of is you arrive at an ambulance, or you arrive in a bad way. You attend this hospital. You've seen what is a national and international news story at this point, and you are incredibly nervous and concerned about the level of care that you're going to be able to get. So what it enables you to do by throwing Lucy Letby under the bus, which if that's what they've done, so be it, then you have a culpable blame on one person. You don't get to blame the hospital as a whole. So I think that's one level of it. And I think the senior doctors were very quick to sort of get ahead of the narrative and say, we'd had concerns for Lucy Letby for a long time. We've been trying to get rid of her for a long while. We sent her to another place. Like, there's a lot of stuff that came out after, but then you question it and go, well, why weren't the police called for 2 years until after the initial evidence came out? Like, it's concerning, right? But then I think there's another level beyond this. So obviously senior management at the hospital needs to be concerned. Then it's a governmental thing. Like, do we want to ever be questioning the NHS in a time in which they should be putting more money towards the NHS, where a time in which we are really questioning where our tax money is going? And do you want to be dealing with civil disobedience, which could absolutely come from a huge, well-publicised case like this, in which it does come out that Lucy Letby wasn't, individually involved. She might have been part of something more wide. So I think there are huge implications of this case. And what I'm going to be watching very closely is how this now goes, because the retrial could be very damaging for those senior doctors and also the government. So it's a scary time, I think, if you're in that place. But the most important thing for everyone now is that those parents finally get the justice. I've seen so many interviews with them where they're gutted about what has happened to their kid, and they are so angry at Lucy Letby. And I think it's important that that anger is channeled in the correct way.
It's important that they know the truth.
Yeah.
And once again, firstly, thank you to you, Josh Veste, because I wouldn't have been able to do a podcast of this nature without you. Like, I literally...
Well, you got me onto this case, mate, so thank you.
I got you onto the case because I became a bit fascinated with it, but at the same time, it's like... You're the brains out of the two of us, and you know what you're doing in the terms of handling with these sort of situations. But I think that we both share the exact same sentiment, don't we? That despite the fact that we've sat and spoke about this for the best part of an hour, and we've given our opinions, come to our own conclusions, the most important thing here is that justice is rightly served in this case, whichever way it is, and it may already have been served, and it may be a case of it just being reaffirmed, but condolences and our most heartfelt wishes to the families involved in this case.
100%.
Yeah. People, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and the next video that we have dropping for you guys is another true crime case, a notorious true crime case, and a true crime case that stretches back now nearly 18 years. You may well have heard of a family called the McCanns, and we will be investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann and speaking in depth about Jerry and Kate McCann. People, I will see you all in the next one.